Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Muriel Bowser. I am joined today by the Chief of Police, Peter Newsham, as well as members of the Metropolitan Police Department command staff, along with Thomas Chittum, Special Agent in charge at the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosive Agency. And we are here today to make an announcement about arrests related to the supply and distribution of deadly drugs and illegal firearms in the District of Columbia. Over the past several weeks, members of the FBI Safe Streets Task Force and the ATF Task Force worked to identify 2 people responsible for supplying and distributing heroin, firearms, and drugs in our community. These individuals have been arrested, and more than 40 kilos of heroin worth more than $2.5 million have been seized. This is the largest ever seizure of heroin in the D.C. region. I'm going to ask Chief Newsham and our federal partners to answer specific questions about the investigation, but I want to say this. Because we have removed this heroin from our streets, we know for a fact that we will save lives. We know that for many years, heroin has been a scourge in our community. It's torn up families, and in recent years, it's become even more deadly because it has been laced with substances like fentanyl that have made heroin more deadly and more dangerous in our communities. I also want to thank our law enforcement partners for this focus, this specific investigation for removing these drugs and guns off of the streets of the district. Chief Newsham.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser, and good afternoon. I want to discuss a few details about 2 significant arrests that have been made following an ongoing investigation, which is a combination of task forces, the FBI Safe Streets Task Force, the ATF MPD Task Force, and the Metropolitan Police Department. Over the past several months, these agencies have worked jointly together to successfully achieve what the mayor mentioned is one of the biggest or the largest seizures in memory here in Washington, D.C. of heroin. During the investigation, an undercover ATF agent purchased firearms, marijuana, and heroin from one of the suspects who was known to sell these illegal items here in the 6th District community. During the course of the investigation, the suspect sold the following items: 9 firearms, 1,500 grams of marijuana, and 270 grams of heroin. On December 19th of 2018, a search warrant was executed in Falls Church, Virginia, and a 28-year-old male was arrested in his home and transported to federal court here in Washington, D.C. This suspect has been charged with unlawful distribution of 100 grams or more of heroin, using, carrying, and possessing a firearm during a drug trafficking offense, and unlawful possession of a firearm by a person convicted of a crime of imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year. That same day, on December 19th, 2 additional search warrants were executed at the heroin supplier's home here in the 4200 block of Foote Street Northeast, and also at a business in Prince George's County. The second suspect was not at his home in Northeast during the time of the search. However, the following items were seized. As the mayor mentioned, more than 40 kilos of heroin, over 40 pounds of marijuana, 6 semi-automatic handguns, 1 Maserati vehicle, assets for civil forfeiture, a drug press, and mixing agents associated with mixing heroin for street sales. On Thursday, January 3rd, at about a little after 3 p.m., the second suspect was arrested by the U.S. Marshals Service in the 2200 block of Linden Avenue in Baltimore, Maryland. 46-year-old Linwood Douglas Thorne of Northeast D.C. was arrested. He was charged with possession with intent to distribute 1 kilogram or more of heroin, using, carrying, and possessing a firearm during a drug trafficking offense. The wholesale value of these drugs is over $2.5 million. We believe that the street value is much more than that. I said this earlier, and you heard the mayor say it. We believe this is one of the largest seizures of heroin in this area. Two things that I will note. During this opioid crisis that many of our communities are suffering, and we are suffering here in Washington, D.C., law enforcement has to do its part. So we're very thankful that we were able to get this large amount of heroin that was laced with fentanyl off the streets. Hopefully that will prevent deaths in our city. And then the second piece, and you know this is near and dear to my heart, anyone who is selling illegal firearms in our community is contributing to the violence that we see in our community. So for these law enforcement officers to make this arrest is significant. I want to thank the FBI Safe Streets Task Force, the ATF Task Force, the U.S. Marshals Service, and of course the members of the Metropolitan Police Department who put this case together. I'm now going to ask Tom Chittum from the ATF to say a few words. Tom.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Chittum. Last name is Chittum. I'm the special agent in charge of ATF's Washington Field Division. You know, when guns and drugs meet, violent crime erupts. In this case, had plenty of both. We're committed to working with our partners at MPD, at the FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office, to disrupt the flow of illegal firearms into D.C., to try and break the shooting cycle of violent crime. Rarely is the cooperation between agencies the focal point of news reporting, but this is a prototypical example of how, when we work together, we can have great success trying to reduce the violent crime in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Special Agent. Chief.
All right, we can take any questions that you all have. No questions? Yes.
Are you going to address the increased gun knife violence in the Shaw neighborhood?
This is one of the ways that we are addressing gun violence in our city is holding people accountable that come into our city with the intention of selling illegal firearms. We're going to continue to do that throughout the year. I think that this case illustrates our resolve in making sure that we're able to reduce violence here in the District of Columbia. Okay, thank you all.